Hi there, Goldilocks here again. This time I'm in Dien Bien Phu. It's a very important town in the far northwest of Vietnam, or what was formerly North Vietnam. Why have I come all the way here? I've come here because this place is one of the most historically significant places in Vietnam. Following the Second World War and the defeat of Japan, Vietnam declared its independence, and Western powers, the Allied victors if you like, said no, you're going to have to remain a French colony. I mean, essentially, there's more to it than that, but essentially. So France came back, tried to take back control, and the Viet Minh, as they were called, the Viet Minh, started fighting for their own independence. They quickly found that when they fought France on the open battlefield, they would lose because they couldn't compete with French firepower. So what did they do? They turned to guerrilla tactics, which were very, very successful and would also prove successful later against the Americans, but we'll talk about that another day. But for here, this is about the French. There was also a shipment of arms from the north of Vietnam into French Indochina country or state called Laos, which is very close to the border from where I'm standing. So the French believed that if they could force or entice the Vietnamese, the Viet Minh, to come and fight them on an open battlefield, surely French would easily carry the day. So this is why they chose Dien Bien Phu as that battle site. On the one hand, to block arms shipments to Laos, which would annoy the Viet Minh, right? And on the other hand, force them out of guerrilla tactics and to, let's say, open battlefield warfare. Now, I'm just going to turn the camera around. Now have a look, this is from my balcony, and you can see the plain, right? It's a flat plain. There is the airport. That's where the French airstrip used to be. Now it's an airport. And notice it's completely surrounded by high ground, isn't it? Look, right the way round, even between those houses there, it's completely surrounded. Yeah, is that good or is that bad? Well, what happened was the Viet Minh, and don't forget the Viet Minh were fighting for their own independence, right? Very strong driving force, as the Americans would also find later. And the Viet Minh and the Vietnamese is a very important point, which the Americans never seem to understand. They were nationalists, wanting their own independence and liberty. Second, they were communists, but they were not fighting for the communist cause primarily. They were fighting for their own nationalist independence, okay? So what the Viet Minh did was handballed all their heavy artillery into tunnels they had dug in these mountains that completely surrounded the French positions, which were just in front of where I'm standing. The French thought they could be supplied by the airport just here. But because of the Vietnamese gun positions, they quickly potholed the airport, making it almost impossible to land. They were able to shoot down supply planes. So the French, who had planned to rely on resupply by air, found themselves completely isolated and cut off, right? The only resupply was by parachute, and half of those perhaps would land in the wrong area, right? Maybe it would go to the Viet Minh rather than the French. So this major siege ensued, right, from March until May 1954. There was intense fighting. I think there was about 4,000 or 5,000 French troops killed, a lot of them legionnaire, the kind of mercenary type people, and many more, about 15,000 Viet Minh were killed. But the French had almost all their troops here. The Viet Minh, they had hundreds of thousands, right? So it was, in terms of percentage of their forces, although tragic, it was relatively minor compared to what the French lost. So the French suffered a very humiliating defeat. The Vietnamese were celebrating because they finally kicked out the much hated colonial masters. And this led to, later in 1954, in the summer and autumn 1954, to the Geneva Accords, which unfortunately, as history's proved so right, led to an even bigger disaster. And that was because during the Geneva Accords in 1954, Vietnam was split between North and South Vietnam. The North being run by the nationalists or the socialists. The South power was given over to, initially, I think, was it the emperor? But it was a guy called Diem who took control reasonably quickly. I think he was appointed by the emperor or used to serve with the emperor. Can't quite remember that bit, to be honest. But this, whenever you split a country in half, right, or in quarters, it never ends well. I mean, look at Korea, for example. Still unresolved even today. So that's why Dien Bien Phu is such a historically significant place, because of the events here in 1954. And tomorrow I'm going to go to the actual bunkers and the trenches, what ended up as First World War type warfare for a while, to try and get a real close look at what happened and learn more. I'll visit the battlefield, I'll visit the bunkers. So I'm looking forward to doing that tomorrow. But in the meantime, this ended up as a siege warfare, basically.